Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Tiki Bar. Today, I am delighted to be joined by Calvin Cupino. He is in a new office in San Francisco. He's a VP of Revenue Operations for Pylon. Calvin, thank you so much for doing this today. How are you?
Thanks for having me. I'm doing great. I'm excited to chat.
First question we asked everyone in the Tiki Bar: what did you want to be when you were a kid?
When I was a kid, I wanted to be first a Mortal Kombat character, which is not possible. And then I wanted to be an astronaut. And then I got sad at the fact that I might be away from home for a while. Wanted to be a skateboarder. I feel like all the typical kind of Southern California kid stuff.
All the cool stuff. Yeah, very, very
All the
vibey.
cool stuff. Yeah.
Astronaut who's also a skateboarder. Okay, and what
Skating
ended up
on the
being,
moon.
Love that. Yeah, you got your built-in half pipes, right? Crater pipes. Or no, bowl. It would be a bowl, right?
It'd be a bowl.
It'd be a bowl. All right, well, tell me what ended up being your first actual paying job.
My first paying job. Have you ever heard of Cutco? Have you ever been called by a Cutco person? That was my first paying job. Trying to spam my relatives into buying knives and then basically cold calling strangers to ask if I could bring knives to their homes.
And how did that go?
I think it went as expected. It was actually a really good experience. I don't regret it at all. A crazy entry into sales, I would say. But I feel like that's kind of what you need these days. You kind of need to be pushed into something that you are very uncomfortable with. And so it was good for a first job. The knives are actually still good. I still use them.
Oh, that's good. And how old were you when you were doing this?
I was probably 18.
You're 18. Okay. And any apprehension about doing it? Like your first cold call, are you the type that's like, I don't want to do this, I got to force myself to do it? Or are you naturally like, this is okay, let's let it rip?
No, I am not naturally okay with cold calling people. This was a learned skill for sure.
Okay, cool. Okay, so then you're growing up in Southern California. You make your way all the way to NYU for college. How did you end up choosing to go to NYU?
Yeah, that's interesting. I think I chose New York more than choosing NYU. I grew up in a suburb in Anaheim, and I knew I just wanted to be in a big city. Actually, my three choices for college or options for college were NYU. The other option was FIT for fashion design. And the last one was Parsons for photography. So I did not know what I was going to do after high school, but I knew I wanted to be in New York. After like some deliberation, it seemed like NYU was probably the safest choice out of those. So went with NYU. It was amazing. Loved it.
What do you remember about, growing up in the California suburbs and then getting to the big city of New York, making some adjustments, not quite the weather, a little more traffic going on in the city? What was that like for you?
It was amazing. I mean, both parts were amazing. Southern California was great. We were all playing outside all the time. It's sunny all the time. There was a lot of freedom, actually. Great weather, beaches. Really can't complain about my childhood at all. New York was great in a different way. I mean, the reason that I left was because growing up in the burbs, Anaheim is great, but there's not a ton of music, art, culture outside of a couple little pockets. And that was just everywhere in New York. And so when I got there, I kind of immediately immersed myself in that scene, joined some bands, met a bunch of friends in film school. It was great. It was everything I wanted.
So tell me about the band I found in my research was Soft Skin, but maybe you could tell me the band arc of your time at NYU and what we need to know.
Yeah, that is some good research. I don't think that's on my LinkedIn anywhere. I was in a band called Soft Skin. I joined that band probably my sophomore year, the height of my coolness, where I was going to school during the day and then doing an internship and then playing at bars well, let's just keep it at playing at bars. And so that was just a really formative period in my life, I think. We were starting to get recognition. It was kind of, I don't know if you listen to the Smiths, but it was basically a Smiths ripoff. So like 80s Brit pop. It was super fun. Yeah.
Do you still play music?
I do still play music, not in a band, just casually. I rent out a little rehearsal studio in Livermore nearby.
Very cool. Very cool. So, and you're what are you studying during this time at NYU?
Yeah, I actually went into NYU undeclared, and then I declared economics as my major, I think junior year. I truly did not know what I wanted to do. Econ seemed like a safe bet where you could kind of pursue multiple career paths, and you're exposed to sort of the quantitative and qualitative thinking side. So it ended up working well. I would say I don't use economics at all in my day-to-day anymore, but it's good to have on the resume.
Tell me about the first job that you landed out of college?
Yeah. In kind of typical NYU fashion, the first job that I landed was from an internship that I had during school. So this was at a advisory firm to hedge fund of funds, which is a mouthful. It was called 1060. I was an analyst. And, a lot of econ finance kids sort of follow this path where they do sort of banking for a couple of years, or they do some sort of analyst role at a related type of firm. So I followed that path as well.
And did you have like a welcome to the working world moment where you're like, okay, I'm not in college anymore, or it shocked you or something along those lines at your time at 1060?
I think it is always crazy to be a 21-year-old person presenting data and findings and analysis to people that have been doing the job for 20, 30 years that are much, much smarter than you. So I'm thinking of a time where they flew me out to one of our big clients in North Carolina. I was in a big fancy boardroom, kind of faking it till I made it, presenting information about this customer's portfolio performance, their risk, their returns, potential investments. And that was very, very new to me. That's not like making a presentation in school.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank goodness you had been selling knives so you could at least experience the potential rejection. It couldn't be worse than that, right?
Exactly.
And that company, from what it seemed like online, was acquired while you were there. Is that correct?
It was acquired, yes.
So you're like early 20s. You probably have no idea what that means. Hey, we're getting acquired. What did that look like for you? What did you think about?
Yeah. It was a surprise to me. I had no idea that it was happening. Basically got called into a meeting one day saying we were acquired. I got a very, very small check. I bought some shoes with it. And then the next day they basically said, we're laying off the whole company. And so it was a mixed bag. I got some shoes out of the deal, but they didn't give me the job at the new company. I think they laid off basically everybody but the founders.
Okay. Well, I hope they were nice shoes.
They were
There you go. You still have them?
No.
Okay. So then you go from 1060 and then you get your first taste of kind of tech and startup life. Is that fair?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
And you're coming in as an enterprise sales development rep. So what is it like to you're kind of going back to the world of Cutco here, I would imagine, right? Is that a fair assumption for your day-to-day at this point?
Yeah, I think that's fair. Really what I was trying to do was get out of finance. So going into an SDR path is how a lot of people start in tech. And so that was appealing to me. I think I was drawn to the potential of making tons of money from sales. And I realized that I loved it just as much as Cutco.
Nice. Well, you were able to get through it, which is kind of the key thing there. What did you think about the go-to-market side of the house, though? Because you're now moving from kind of finance analysis, and now you're seeing a whole different side of a company. What did you think about that?
It was actually a blast. I loved it. It was, that job can be draining at times. So I did, as you know, eventually move back to the sort of analytical side of the house. But again, that's an experience that you can't really create. Just hitting people up on the phones all day, sending emails all day, being competitive with your friends and teammates. It's a really, really cool culture. And here at Pylon too, it's so amazing. I sit right next to the SDRs. I hear them dialing every day. There's a channel in Slack that we have that's called Getting Bodied. So if somebody's getting like roasted on the phone, they just share it. It's a really great environment if you're trying to get into sales or startups in general, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, that was my path. I was a BDR out of college. I did not like it at all, but I now can empathize with anybody who's in that position, right? I'm sure those SDRs that you talk to are like, oh, he's done it before. That probably helps.
I think it helps.
Now, you end up eventually moving from sales into operations. So can you tell me about that trajectory? What made you want to do that?
I just knew that sales wasn't for me in the long term. And so I did want to stay in tech. I loved the culture. I loved the flexibility. And so I wanted to pivot into a role where I could use the skills I already had. And so revenue operations, RevOps is very, very similar to being an analyst at an investment buy-side firm in some ways. You're doing a lot of modeling. You're doing a lot of research. You are interfacing with all these different stakeholders. And so this seemed like a sort of natural pivot point for me. And so there was a rec that opened up for an internal post at Gigia, the startup that I was at. I applied, had a great mentor who gave me a lot of freedom. We were both kind of learning this role together and we figured it out. It went really well.
So you've obviously gone on to have the senior positions in this function now. And so was there a point when you're doing that kind of first job in revenue sales operations where it clicks and you're like, okay, I found the happy medium here. I'm in the go-to-market side, but I have my analytical background here. What about it made it click?
Honestly, I feel like it kind of just clicked day one. It seemed like all of the things that I was good at were available in this type of role. And it was easy to see impact pretty quickly. I guess one notable memory is I was showing something to my CEO at the time, and he said, "This is the coolest chart I've ever seen." And that is a very, very nerdy comment to say, but it validated like what I was doing in this role. And so little wins like that, obviously there are decisions that are made that can sometimes be hard because of results of your analysis, but I would say it clicked pretty early.
Do you remember what the chart was?
It was a chart about how many support representatives we would need in different time zones, but it was very, very stylized, I would say.
Oh, okay. That makes sense. So your kind of artistic background is coming through to help you there.
Yeah, a lot of pastels, I think.
It always helps. Okay, so now you're at Gigia. You're kind of moving up. You found your niche operationally. You're probably in your like mid-20s at this point, and you get hit with acquisition number 2. Last time you got hit with an acquisition, you got your new shoes, but then you had some trouble. What happened this time around? What were you thinking?
This time it was an amazing experience. So to start, it was great experience for me because I was part of the sort of core Tiger team that worked on this acquisition. So it felt like I knew the secret that nobody else did. It was just like me, the CEO, the CFO, and we were going through the due diligence process, doing the pitches, talking about how potential integrations and mergers would look. So that was super fun to me. And so when the acquisition actually closed, it felt like we just did something huge. I mean, we did. It was a very successful exit for us. And so I loved that piece of it. After the acquisition closed, where we had to start work again and integrate the two companies together, that was less fun, honestly. I ended up leaving in the middle of a retention bonus because the work didn't seem as impactful for me, but the overall experience was amazing.
It's right around this time that you get sort of an entrepreneurial bend. And I want to ask what the founding story of Scholarly was.
Yeah. So I mentioned that there was a retention bonus for me to stay at the acquiring company after this acquisition. This was a super, super big company, like tens of thousands of employees, very, very different pace from the startup world that I was used to. And so I didn't love it. It's a great company. It wasn't for me at the time. And so I wanted to basically move back to a very, very fast paced world. I got a little bit of cash from the acquisition. So I decided to try to start my own venture, which was Scholarly. Scholarly was an app that would basically help students find scholarships that they were most likely to win. So I left the big company to start this using some of the acquisition money. And the way that I came up with the idea was I went to NYU. I left with, I think, UK in debt. And so it's just a terrible problem for kids to have because they are kind of still kids at that point. And I wanted to address this, and this is how I thought we could address that.
Wow. Well, that's awesome. So then what were the steps? Like, you've had different types of roles. You're familiar with go-to-market. You're familiar with a kind of an analytical bend. Now you're in the founder's seat and you're trying to build product. What is most surprising about, okay, I'm going to do this, and then you start doing it?
What is most surprising? You learn so much when you try to start your own venture. Things that were surprising to me were being able to recruit engineers, for example, to work on this idea for free. I wasn't paying anybody anything. Building an idea, building a prototype, shipping it out to schools on the East Coast, talking to VCs, all of it was surprising. It was a first time for everything. And I think what it gave me was just more confidence in general. To spoil the story, it failed. I wound it down. And it's weird to say that you gain confidence from failing, but you learn so much, you do so much that it probably was a bigger boost to me in terms of work and life and productivity than probably any other job.
That's awesome. I think it's a great story, and it doesn't seem like a failure to me. I mean, you were able to do a lot of things for my research on it, and check out a whole bunch of different areas of growth for yourself. So that's really cool. Now you go to Lean Data during this time as well, and Lean Data is like kind of like in the middle of their like extreme growth, I would imagine, during that time. How would you characterize your time at Lean Data?
Lean Data was amazing as well. I just rehashing this resume out loud. I feel very lucky to be a part of the companies that I was at. Lean Data was particularly great because I reported to an amazing boss, Rachel, the chief customer officer at the time. She gave me a lot of freedom. She let me test this newfound confidence that I had from doing the scholarly venture. And it was the first time, I would say, where I was in a role reporting to someone else, but I felt like I had true autonomy over the roadmap, the strategy, everything. Partly because of what I learned during Scholarly, but also partly because I had a great manager.
Oh, that's awesome. You mentioned great managers. I want to talk about when was the first time that you were responsible for leading people? And I find that when I'm talking to folks, it's often one of the things they bring up is like it wasn't totally what they expected. So I'm just curious what was most surprising to you about when you actually get into that point. Obviously, you're doing it a bit with Scholarly, but when you're leading people, how did that first experience go for you?
Yeah, I first became a manager at Gigya, early 20s. And I think I did what NYU or basically any business school student would do, which is read all the books on how to manage people, read all the books on how to talk to people, how to sell to people, and then you start to manage people. And yeah, they help, but it's different. It's just one of those things that you need to learn with experience. The frameworks can help. The way you think about problems can help, but there's no substitute for just doing it the first time. So what was surprising? So many things were surprising. The first report that I had made more money than me, which I didn't know was possible. Yeah, so many things.
So what would you say has changed about your leadership style now that you do have those scars? You were in your like early 20s when you're doing that first round to now.
Yeah, this is going to make me sound like a micromanager. I'm not. But one of the things that I firmly believed was we should, as managers, get out of the way of our direct reports. I think that's partially true. But I think the mindset that I come to now when it comes to managing is trust but verify. Our job as managers is to ask the best questions. And we might not be experts in every single domain that we own anymore, but asking the right questions can help you uncover problems or solutions that even experts in domains might not be able to.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense. And so you go to GEM as well, Lean Data, and then how do you eventually end up at Pylon?
Yeah. I go to GEM. I am having an amazing time at GEM. Again, I'm reporting to an amazing manager, Susan, the CFO/COO, director level. I have a great team, multiple layers under me. And so everything is working. One day I get an in-mail from one of the founders here at Pylon saying that they're building out the RevOps team, want me to come chat. Their growth had been amazing, even higher than the numbers that I just shared earlier. And candidly, there was a gap in my resume of being the first person in seat in this function. And so I think the combination of the crazy growth trajectory and the ability to fill out this gap of being the first person in seat to grow a company up to like mid double digits ARR was super appealing to me. So I had a really tough choice, honestly. Leave the comfort and everything that was going well at GEM because it's a great company. It's doing well, and start over, take a risk, but it paid off so far. I think I'm really happy with the decision.
Oh, well, that's good. Okay, so you come in as a founding RevOps. You're the first one. What is the hardest part of building RevOps from scratch?
The hardest part is trying to find the balance between doing strategy work while also doing the tactical builds, because nothing existed. There were no Salesforce flows, which was great. You know, there are no errors to debug. We could build everything right the first time. But switching between the IC hat and then the strategic manager hat, I think, was a little bit challenging, honestly.
How about the converse? What is the best part of being the first mover?
I think it's what I mentioned, which is that there's nothing broken yet. Any future person that joins can blame me for broken flows or failed flow interviews, anything like that. So we get to start from scratch. And I think at a startup, this is generally always true. Anything that you do can make a difference. But when you are the only person in the role, the impact that you see is just like exponential. So it's super cool to see an idea come from anywhere. It could be from Marty, the CEO, me, an SDR, and then it be implemented the next day, the next week, and then we start to see value immediately.
And you had a cheeky post about copying Zendesk's pricing, which I thought was refreshing because most companies would have just done so and not mentioned anything. Can you tell the story of that post and kind of what you're getting at there and how it's worked?
Yeah, and maybe I shouldn't have mentioned anything. The TLDR is when Pylon was a younger company, we were trying to figure out how to price our products. And what we ended up with was basically just copying Zendesk's pricing exactly. So if you were to go to Zendesk's website, you would see almost the same structure, exact same price. And then you would go to Pylon's and see, okay, this is exactly the same. So we did do that for velocity's sake. We wanted to focus on building product as opposed to manufacturing pricing, I would say. But a pleasant side effect was that it really shifted negotiations focus from being about discounting and special terms negotiations to truly about product. It was like, do you want the omni-channel support that Pylon can give you? Do you want the conversational intelligence layer that Pylon can give you? Or do you just want this incumbent solution that is a little bit behind? And so that was a fun transition to see. And it made the buying process, I would say, probably easier for a lot of prospects.
Oh, that's awesome. No, I really enjoyed the post. I'm glad you made it. Okay, so you're heavily both in the weeds and handling a sort of strategic nature of RevOps at Pylon. When you have a moment to kind of breathe for yourself and you're looking at the landscape of your career, your company, your function, what are you most curious about right now? When you have those moments, what are you trying to learn about?
When it comes to work, I am most curious about finding unique ways to grow the company. So that could be something like building a homegrown AI SDR. It could be exploring new tech. I mean, with AI these days, everything is evolving at such a rapid pace. There's so many tools that give you amazing idiosyncratic intent signals now, and other things that I probably can't talk about, but growth in ways that would be abnormal for a startup that is as small as we are.
I love that answer. RevOps, thinking about how we can grow the company in different ways. Okay, how about a piece of content, whether it's a book, podcast? Now, this one I prefer if you do something that's maybe not career-oriented, that it's for Calvin the person, your favorite book of all time, a podcast that has moved you, an essay, a song, whatever it is that we can recommend to the listeners.
I feel like I have pretty niche interests. Let's see. A song is one that comes to mind. Maybe 6 months ago, a friend sent me this DJ set of this DJ playing at a bodega in Bushwick, I think. And then one of the songs in that set, like really, really stuck out to me. This person released it this week. The artist's name is Duco, D-U-C-O. And then the song is called Denki Poison Groove. So crazy, weird UK garage stuff, but maybe a more normal recommendation. If anybody cooks, there's a book that I really like from Kenji Lopez Alt, The Food Lab. It is encyclopedic in size, but it's actually really fun and really easy to understand and apply the concepts.
That's my purely selfish question, because I could just get to see all these cool things that people recommend, and then I just go and check them out myself.
Love it.
All right, Calvin. Well, thanks so much. I really appreciate you taking the time to walk us through your career here. We'd love to have you on again sometime.